Good. All right. So good evening here. Go ahead. You ready? All right. Good evening here. So we're starting our leadership group discussion 1 here, module 2. My name is Dan Blackburn. We'll go ahead and get everybody introduced.
My name is Amy Todd.
My name is Naja Thomas.
Jessica Johnson.
Okay, so we're going to roll right into, we were given assignment number 4, and in our assignment, we were given a situation where a group of teachers were tasked with conducting an audit of their third grade science curriculum at their elementary school. This standard hit on standard teacher leadership standard 3, hitting on curriculum instruction and assessment. So just summing up here, like I said, is standard 3. In the initial review, the teachers kind of talked about what assessments they were using, went through a practice where they were talking about they were going through some tests that were developed 5 years ago, and they had to make some changes with that just based on coming up to date here with a current curriculum. So I'll go ahead and pass it off.
Yeah, so just piggybacking off of what Dan said, this scenario is definitely about those teacher leaders and working with the third grade science teachers, and they're reviewing the curriculum and revising assessments because the standards were updated. And this is very familiar to a situation we ran into this year. But I think, like he said, this most connects to teacher leadership standard 3 because it's really about improving teaching and learning and aligning the assessments through the curriculum. I also thought it connected to standard 2 in a way because I feel like the teacher leader is helping teachers work together and talk through the changes. It's also asked of us to try and find the core leadership task, and I thought that was guiding teachers through the assessment process to make sure that the tests match the updated standards, and still keeping the same expectations high for students when taking those assessments. It's also, I feel like, assessing the teacher leader's ability to be able to lead a collaborative process and help the teachers improve the assessment quality, but also by not doing the work for them. And that's what I got.
Okay. So piggyback off of what you said, especially the whole maintaining the high expectations. I did know on my end that, the teacher leader has to, realign the assessments. They're looking at the standards, and since they were old, they're trying to make sure that they match the standards with the rigor and the expectations of today. And also just making sure that it also aligns to the students, because we have so many different students in one classroom. So you have to look at all of that at once. And also being able to lead the process, making sure that the teachers are paying attention to what they're doing and make sure that aligns to the unit and what they give the students as well. I would also just like to say that, you have to reflect on what's taught in that as well. So, it may make sense still, even from 5 years ago. However, you still have to pay attention to the fact that the kids are different from what they used to be 5 years ago. And you have to refine it to fit today.
Okay. The things I also agree with standard 3, because it is what the core part is of that curriculum instruction. And you're having to know what the students know, what do you want them to understand, as well as what do you want them to do or perform. And whenever they were looking at those summative assessments, that was something that you have to do with every single time, make sure that it correlates and make sure that whatever you're teaching, the rigor that you're teaching in the classroom is matching the rigor of your tests. If you have those, like we call them level 3 and level 4 questions on your test, you also need to make sure you're using that in your classroom so your kids can understand, and it's not just always multiple choice. And they did have some small answer choices that they had to do as well, like small paragraph type things, but just make sure that they go together. Then standard 3, also making sure that the teachers are working together and that they're invested in what you're doing. It's not just the teacher leader doing, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to make these changes. We need to figure out what are our gaps. What can we do to improve that information so that we're having everything and all students are needs are being met, like Nikki just said as well. So collaborate together.
Awesome. All right, so just taking a look at bullet point number 2 here, the second bullet point for prompt 1. What is core leadership problem, challenge, or task in the scenario? So as I kind of looked at it and was thinking about it, I had a couple just ideas that it came to my mind, which what I kind of thought were problems or challenges with the situation. Obviously, the first one we kind of touched upon already, that the assessments were 5 years old. I mean, you guys are elementary teachers. I'm a high school, but it seems like in some of my experiences at elementary school, the curriculum seems to change and the standards change probably a little bit more. I mean, that's just me, what I think, than more than what high school does. So you guys are getting new things more often, more frequently, different curriculum, more, different ways to help with reading, etc. So there's a lot of different things that are changing. So if you're talking about something that's maybe 5 years old, a lot's changed, especially in this time with technology the way it is. I feel like something that is 5 years old in the modern era, like there could be a lot of things that may have changed in that time. So just adapting and getting everything aligned to maybe what has changed over the last 5 years, especially with standards. I mean, state standards have changed. They're getting tweaked all the time. So it's just important to make sure that everything is fully aligned there. Just some challenges outside of that, just making sure that the group works well together and has effective collaboration. I mean, that can also be a problem if people aren't on the same page. You could have, a person in the group that's auditing thinking about something here and the other person's way at the other end of the spectrum. So just making sure you're on the same page and facilitating, effective collaboration with all of that. So just a potential problem there. I'm assuming, and if you're working together, hopefully you're all aligned to begin with, but that's not always the case. We have challenges within our departments and our faculty members. So just potential, I thought, an issue there, just making sure you're all, on the same page with what's going on and making sure you stay aligned with what your standards are and making sure that rigor that you guys talked about is, all in line.
Yeah, so same thing. I kind of hit on this a little bit earlier with this question we're answering now. And I'll just say it again. The task that I found, the main leadership task that I found is just being able to guide the teachers and facilitate that assessment review process to make sure that those tests are going to line up and match the updated standards to keep those high expectations for the students, like I already talked about. And I know Nikki hit on it too, but just being able to the teacher leader being able to lead that collaborative process and to help teachers improve that quality without doing all the work for them.
I agree. I don't want to, take up much of our time repeating all that, but I definitely agree because I put the same thing. The assessments are a little bit out of date, so they no longer match the updated curriculum. So, the task at hand was to allow them to collaborate together to meet those needs.
I did put one thing that would be important, a challenge could be is knowing what they did the prior year that's going to build to this year and the year after, what our responsibility would be to prepare those students for the year or next year. That may be kind of hard too, because if their standards have changed, that would be something that we'd have to look at as a whole too, just to make sure we're preparing them adequately. And another thing I put, I know we always talk about our students' needs, but whenever you're working with a group of people, even just like now, knowing the needs of all of our people that we're collaborating with. I mean, there's some people like Dan a while ago, he said he's a paper pencil kind of person. I am too, where some others may be more computer based. So I think you would have to also meet those needs of your teachers to make sure that everybody's engaged in the process and aligning that curriculum.
Okay. All right, hitting on bullet point 3, what knowledge, skills, or leadership behaviors is this scenario assessing? Excuse me. I had just a couple notes that I took down. Just knowledge, obviously, of the curriculum, leadership skills and behaviors, curriculum knowledge, literacy knowledge. As far as assessment literacy, excuse me, knowing just how to properly put together tests and how they should be with, like you talked about, I believe Jessica talking about hitting some of those levels, like your levels of questioning on your assessment, making sure it was rigorous enough, and just your collaborative skills. So that's
Yeah.
kind of some of the things that I talked about, that I thought were important, in assessing this. Just, I think all of those kind of encompassed together would get you on the right track.
Yeah, and same thing. I kind of answered all of the bullet points in all of my notes. They're all kind of like tangled together. So I already said it. But just I thought that it was assessing the teachers, leaders, ability to be able to lead that collaborative process, just like Dan said, and being able to help the teachers improve those assessments without doing all the work for them.
Okay. And same, understanding the standards-based alignment, being able to have those professional conversations, with your people, being able to balance the rigor and accessibility. So being able to make sure that it's the high expectations, but also make sure everybody has the access to those resources. And kind of just piggybacking off of what Jessica said, making sure you're meeting the needs of teachers in order to meet the needs of their specific students.
A skill that I put on here that they would need, sorry, my voice, that they would need to know how to is actually how to carry out an audit. I think that's assessing that skill for us. That was a big thing our last class that we had, going through that process. I'd never done one before, so that was new to me, where one of the girls in my group, she had before, so she was a big help. So finding those resources, like you just said, Nikki, of who can help us carry it out like we need to. Is there another grade that's done it and they've done a well job? So I think that would be important. And just like all of you said, the knowledge of the curriculum, are we able to collaborate with those people and meet everybody's needs while supporting our students, to make them be successful in that area of knowledge as well. So.
Okay, so taking a look here at prompt 2, first bullet point, what stood out to your group about the assignment? I think the biggest thing that just, I guess, slapped me right in the face was just I mean, I don't know if it's like devastating, but to me, I just thinking that it was 5 years old, the curriculum and what they were using, that kind of stood out to me right away. This is something they were using. I mean, I don't really know how much that truly changes, but maybe it's just the needs of your school or your budget. Sometimes they look to flip around some of the things you're using, and maybe it's just not, it doesn't fit your budget. I'm part of a small school district that isn't, loaded with money. So, I mean, sometimes to just totally flip the curriculum on its head may not be feasible. So, but I just thought something that was 5 years old was something that stuck out to me. And just talking about in that assignment, when they hit upon the reading, talked about the universal design for learning. I thought that was a key point that I picked out that was interesting. There seems to be a little bit more of a push for that too, instead of just the basic pen and paper tests that maybe we all had when we were in school. Just finding different ways to assess. That was something that stuck out to me, and I feel like kids kind of enjoy that, especially at the high school level. Sometimes we do things a little differently. They're so used to just getting on the computer and cranking out a test on whatever they call it, not Edge Elastic anymore, whatever, I forget what the testing programs they're using all the time. But to give them something different, a non-traditional test or assessment, they enjoy it and they take a lot of pride in it. And we can get them, excited about some of those assessments, and maybe that gives them gives us a better understanding of how they're doing in class, instead of just saying, oh, here's this 40 question test that you're going to get. So when they talked about that, that was something that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and I actually almost have like the exact same answer. That stood out to me the most is when they responded, the sample response focused on the universal design of learning. And how, like you just said, our primary students have only, like, I've only ever seen primary tests like pen to paper, and like talking about different ways that they could show what they know. I've heard that term a lot throughout college and throughout grad school, but I really never hear anyone at work or like my coaches or anyone talk about different ways that they could show what they know, or and I've never even really heard anyone talk about the universal design for learning at work. And it might be because we're smaller. I mean, we're not small, but it feels small because we're in a small town. But that's what stood out to me in the sample response, and just how like that would be able to support fairness and like high expectations all around, especially for someone like me who I teach special education students in first grade, but they're required to take all the same test as everyone else. And it would make, I mean, I like that they didn't just say like make it easier, make the assessments easier, make the responses easier, but it just talked about different ways that they could show what they know, and that could help out. And I don't want to say make my life easier, but if I could show that my students know certain things in different ways, then that would be great. And so that's what stood out to me with that is the universal design for learning as well.
Okay. One thing that I put that was a little bit different that stood out to me was how easy it is for schools to teach one thing or stay on one track, but you're assessing something else. Or you could go in with the mindset of you're assessing one thing, but once you get really into the data or get into whatever you're looking at, your mindset changes for what you're looking for. So, just to go based off of what Amy said, we do look at different ways. So in my county, we look at different ways to assist students. So with second grade, I do a lot of pencil and paper just because I like to see exactly what they know, and I'm like sick of the computer. But we do take a lot of computer-based tests, so we may put it on School City, or we may put it, they take their test on Star. So they have a lot of technology based, but when I noticed that when you put it on pencil and paper, you get a little different. When you get the manipulatives in math, so you may get the answer a little bit differently. So, it may not be a school-wide thing. However, I look at the differentiated ways of learning. Like, okay, let's try it this way, because I've noticed that we could go into collaborative planning, assessing one thing. But based on what I've seen with my students, I'm looking at a different view of it, if that makes sense. So.
It's the same as most of yours as well, just providing those multiple assessments. And that is one of the beauties of the CTA department, like I teach in. We are very project-based. I do give formative and summative assessments, but they are not always paper, pencil, computer. It's hey, get over here and show me what you know, manipulate this stuff. Or I've even had just conferences with kids about the information, just let them regurgitate that information to me based off of a rubric with that stuff. So that's one beauty of project-based learning that the CTA departments were able to do. I like the idea that they put in there about the targeted questions. However, I would love to know what those would be to keep me going in line. I guess that would be where you have that little, the alignment audit. You would have those questions kind of like we had last semester. And then that teacher leader was there to help and guide. They weren't just telling them, hey, we're going to do this and this. Those were like my three things that stood out.
Okay, bullet point number 2 here. While we know the sample response was strong, using the scoring rubric and scale, how would your group rate the response? Why? Just based on what I saw here, I really liked the response there. I would say to me that looked like, I guess a 4. I mean, it was fully addressed. It gave some good options. It gave, instead of talking about those alternate assessments, I kind of, they pounded this in Illinois. They called it a lot of personalized mastery. It was basically, how are you mastering whatever you're doing? And they just give you different ways to do it. So it was a lot of work for a teacher, but it's very similar to what was talked about in this article. So I thought it was a great response. Just the different ways we could assess people, and Nikki's talked about just the ways to differentiate. I'm in a freshman environmental science resource class, and I really had to. I mean, I recently certified special ed. I've always been PE, drive, red health, but got certified in special ed as well. And just finding new ways, even this is year 19 for me, to get creative in how I'm addressing some of my students and their different needs. So when she talked about different ways we can differentiate, I thought this was a great response where it kind of talks about those non-traditional ways that we can assess. So I thought it kind of reflected a 4 or 3 to me.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I thought it was a great response. I thought that it was a 4 as well, and I gave it a 4. I felt like it clearly addressed, like you said, both parts of the task, and it gave us a real strategy to use, and it explained how the teacher leader would be able to, you know, facilitate and guide those teachers. I felt like it was a strong answer because of it showed collaboration and it showed leadership. And like I said, not just a strategy. So I rated a 4.
I agree. I said 4 as well. It addressed both parts. It used the UDL, that strategy, talked about collaborations, gave examples. So I agree.
Sorry, I was
Yeah.
coughing, so I muted. I'm so sorry. Um, I agree with all of you as well. The UDL that they mentioned, just like you just mentioned, Nikki, was a strategy that they used. They gave us, some specific examples of things that we could use as well. And then like the collaboration piece was important. And then those targeted questions, I guess that would be from that audit that would guide their ways to accommodate those students to make sure that they have that differentiated learning happening for them and everything's matching up, their assessments are matching up to the actual teaching in the classroom. So I said a 4 as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, bullet point 3, why might this scenario be important for teacher leaders in real schools? I mean, we all kind of had experience doing our own curriculum audit, so I felt like very important. And to me, I audited our high school US history or the history department and chose those teachers who were getting ready for the UFC, obviously later on, in the spring. So it was very relevant for all of them. I probably went into greater detail than they typically do. I mean, they're obviously analyzing and studying it, and so is the instructional coach. But it would be very relevant for teacher leaders in school because you can really pinpoint some of those issues that maybe they're having as far as what standards maybe they're struggling with or their students are struggling with. And it really got down to the nitty gritty details of some of the data and areas they were struggling with. Like for example, they were struggling with the age of Jackson in US history. So, I mean, they may not have known that, but I had like particular percentages and numbers where they were really, really low in those areas. So, I mean, they may be able to figure that out, but just all the numbers and data we crunched, it was relevant, very relevant. So that could easily be done in whatever situation you're in your school.
Oh yeah, I felt like it definitely matters. This scenario matters a lot because for me, I've been able to learn a lot. I'm a special ed teacher, so I'm not always involved in like PLCs a lot of the times over the years with my gen ed teachers that I work with because I work in inclusion. But really, the past 2 years when I came to this new school, they really involved me. So I've really gotten to see what this process looks like and being able to really understand why assessments drive what the students learn. Although we always hate assessments and we hate to see them not do good, but it when we get into PLCs and we're talking with our coaches and our administration, if the tests aren't aligned to the standards, we as teachers can't really know what the students understand, and then what we're adapting or changing into our instruction suffers. And so I've really kind of seen over the past 2 years how this all ties in together. And so teacher leaders have to make sure that everything is working together.
I agree. And just to add on to that, if our assessments aren't aligned, then our data, what we do for intervention, I'm not sure if you guys have intervention, but our intervention periods and, just all the decisions that we make throughout the day for the students won't be aligned. So I definitely think, it's very important for us to understand what changes and then adapting to those changes to see how we can, keep a steady flow of high expectations for our students.
Mine were the same as well. It's just one of those, but I did put, that this scenario would prepare us to be a little bit more familiar, I think, even with that audit, tool that we used, last semester. Like I said, I'm not a curriculum person. It's not my favorite. I'd rather be the classroom management, help you set up your classroom and have things rolling. But I do think the whole curriculum part will be, I mean, I think at the primary level in elementary, maybe middle, it may not be as stressful, but at the high school level, I'm no biology teacher, but whenever I did the curriculum audit with the biology teachers last semester, that was something that was eye-opening to me, the information and then how we all look together at how you think they have to match. And especially those questions, because they do Illuminate in our high school. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Illuminate, but those
Yeah, I am.
questions are, oh, my own daughter, she's in biology this semester. And I just remember listening to some of the way that the teacher was actually on their study guides and the information they use, using those same level 3 and 4 level questions. It wasn't just definitions. It wasn't just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They actually had to apply that information. So I think it just gives us a good eye opener, on what we'll have to prepare ourselves, the knowledge that we're going to need as that teacher leader.
Mhm.
Okay, and last bullet point, kind of touched upon there a little bit, but kind of wraps everything up here. What can you do to prepare for scenarios that align to the standard of the assignment? So kind of this, what we've already been working just with that curriculum audit, excuse me, stumbling with my words. Just going in depth and really analyzing, like I'm not like you said, Jessica, I'm not a really that gung ho on looking at data, but it was very important and eye opening to me to kind of get down to those root issues of what students may be struggling with. So it was a lot of work, but it was very good work that allowed me to like pinpoint some of those main areas and why they were struggling. As I look through the lesson plans, look through their curriculum map, look through all those different ways that they were teaching, their summatives, their formatives, and was able to use that and get a better understanding of what was going on. And I wasn't even really in there, obviously. So it just allowed me to just get a better grasp of what's going on within our school and what's going on in a very important subject matter that's getting prepped for an important test. So, I thought it was very important and allowed me and everyone else to get on the same page there as far as the curriculum knowledge.
Yeah. And like I said, my school kind of does something like this. Every week we have weekly PLCs. We rotate. One week we discuss whatever our math assessment was. The next week we would discuss whatever our reading assessment was, usually like a comprehension test. I mean, these are first graders, so these are like 10-question tests and short little tests, but we go through every week with our academic coaches, whether that be the math or the reading coach, and we're already doing this. We're pulling up all of the data onto the screen and we're looking at who's struggling. We're pointing out whether that is a child that has an IEP or whether that is a child in early intervention. And we're looking at the questions and making sure they're aligned with what we taught for the week. And if there's something that needs to change for the next year, the coach makes a note for that. And it actually goes beyond that too. Our school at the end of the year uses teachers from both of our primary schools. We have 2 primary schools. And they get substitutes for the teachers, the general education teachers, not a special ed, but they make time during those days and they use subs, and those teachers, they work together in the coach's room, usually a teacher from each school, maybe 2 from each school, but they sit down and they look at all the notes they made throughout the year, they review all the assessments, and they make sure that everything matches the standards and the curriculum. And then last year we had some changes to some standards in math, I believe, and then this year going into the year will be reading. And so they'll do that again where they have days where they're all working together to make these changes that to make sure everything matches and aligns. And the teacher leaders are there to support, of course, like the coaches, which is who I, call the teacher leaders. And the admin is sometimes they'll pop in, and maybe even some district level folks will pop in, but they let the teachers work. They let the teachers lead the work, and they let the teachers make those decisions. And I feel like it really gives those teachers ownership and helps them feel invested in being able to improve those assessments and helps them feel in charge of that. So if it comes to a point where they see something that throughout that next year and they're like, oh, wait, what happened here because we changed this, they have the opportunity to say that because they know that they were the ones leading that work. And so to prepare for scenarios like this, I think teacher leaders should practice leading PLCs, which ours do, and that's what they're doing, and using assessment alignment tools like we did last semester. I thought that was a great tool. I've never seen my coaches use tools like that. We're usually just talking. We have like a timekeeper and like someone who writes the notes, someone who edits our document. But they're asking the right, guiding questions is what they're doing. There's no usually any alignment tool, but I think that is how you should prepare for scenarios like this. Just like I said earlier, I keep writing in my notes, and it's something that I want to be able to do one day, not anytime soon, but just knowing how to lead a group of adults, because it's hard. Like we said earlier, it's hard to get everyone on the right page. You want to make sure we're all on the right page, but being able to lead them without taking over what they're wanting, what their voices are, because essentially they're the ones that are going to be teaching it. So you do want to make everyone happy, but you also want to be able to lead that group into the right, scenarios that they need to go in. So that's how I think that teacher leaders should prepare for scenarios like this.
You really hit everything. Honestly, I put the
I know
same
it's
thing.
easy though, like when my school is like doing this scenario.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because it's the same thing. Analyzing assessments, being able to lead and have those opportunities to lead PLCs, being on data teams. So whatever that looks like. Because right now I'm on the PBIS data team. I'm on the staff curriculum and culture assessment. So working with those assessments and then also looking at STAR or unit assessments for the students. So we already get that real experience, really. So whether that's in your room and you're the leader in there, or you're having opportunities to put the leadership role in place.
Like all of us have said, we're kind of piggybacking off of each other and doing the same thing. I think probably for me on my side, it would be more the going and putting myself out there at the other schools and even at our high school level. Our PLCs, unfortunately, it's wherever I land because we do not have common planning with our CTA department because we all teach our own concentration. But however, I have sat in on math, I've sat in on language arts, I've done all of them. So I know what they do, but I think just being well versed in how they carry on their meetings, their department head carries out those meetings, kind of like how you said, Amy, that everybody just they're in charge. It's not the teacher leader or our instructional coach, or even if our principal or assistant principals are there, they're there to interject when they need to, just to, if it's even just to keep people on track. But for the most part, they let the teachers do that information and take over. So I think, like you said, even just being comfortable and even confident, but not overly confident in being able to lead a group of teachers, even though we're not the ones that teach that stuff, because I know that's nobody can teach what I teach here at the high school. It's always a joke because I'm the only one. But just like I couldn't go into the biology department right now and teach what they're teaching biology, even though my daughter's taking the class, I still don't understand everything because if you don't use it, you lose it, I really believe. So I think as teacher leaders, we'd have to put ourselves out there and we would have to be vulnerable to make sure that we're willing to learn from those teachers because they're the ones who do it. And just make sure that we're doing research-based information with them, making sure that we're staying in the know on what's best practices. to share with them as well, and study that curriculum. And that would be so hard. I think at every level, just making sure that we are well versed in that and not go in there and say, I don't know, because I can't stand that when somebody tells me I don't know, and you're the person I'm supposed to go to ask those questions. I want to make sure that I tell them, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find the answer for you. Let me do some research, or let me find my resources. Let me call these college friends that I just met at GSW and let me ask them some questions, and get some help. Because I did that last semester with Chloe, because she was so good with that audit, because she had actually done one before. So the science department were asking more questions. I was like, well, hold on, time out. I'll come back to y'all next week and we'll talk some more. So I think just being vulnerable is going to be a big thing for us as teacher leaders coming in, especially for younger teachers. I've been teaching for 25 years now. I'm on the downward slope, but I still
Jealous.
want, yeah, right. I
I'm
still
on
want to
year
learn.
6.
Yeah, oh, bless your heart. But you have great things to come to you though. But I just want to be able to learn with them, and that's what I want them to understand, that I'm there to learn with them as well. So
Catherine, you hit on something that it made me, I forgot kind of that we used to do this, but I was at Valdosta High School for a couple of years, and they used to do data days twice a year, where kind of what you talked about. We literally were out of school the whole day, and they got subs for whatever department, let's say, biology, mainly the EOCs, a lot of them. And they would crunch all the data and the numbers just to see kind of what was going on. It was similar, I guess, to what they did in the audit, but I never really was involved in a lot of that. But I remember they used to do those data days all the time. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
usually,
never really involved in those either because I'm the special ed teacher and the gen ed teachers do that.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. Like when I came there, I was like, wow, because I came from a district that didn't really focus a lot on that, or like, especially not wanting to get substitutes for a day for
Yeah.
teachers.
Yeah, we
Mhm.
have data days as well, but the whole school is involved. Even our SPED teachers, our paras, everybody's there,
Mm.
and we focus on one. So the kids are out, but we focus on one thing. It could be attendance, it could be behavior, or it could be actual curriculum. So
Yeah, that's nice. I keep saying one day, our special ed department at our school will get our own data day.
There you go. Yep.
advocate for yourself, girl.
That's right.
Advocate.
They need us for behavior though.
No doubt.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
okay.
all right. Well, that wraps up our conversation here tonight, and hope everyone enjoyed it.
All right. Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you.